Hey mamas, and welcome back to another episode of Knit Your Stress Away. I am Nadine, your host, and we're talking all things knitting. And today I am just excited to chat about this particular topic here because I know I hear this from so many people out there who are interested in learning how to knit and get kind of tripped up by perfectionism. What if I told you that knitting is one of the very few things where perfection doesn't matter? As a matter of fact, I think there's more than just a few things where perfection doesn't matter. But this craft is honestly the one that I think has the least amounts of perfection needed, and it makes the process so much more fun. I want you to stick around because today we're going to embrace the joy of imperfection in knitting, and we're going to dive deeper into this topic so that you can remove this hurdle in your own knitting journey if that is in fact what's holding you back. So let's dive in. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away. Are you a mom who feels overwhelmed, craving a creative outlet, but unsure where to start or how to fit it into your already packed day? I have dedicated this podcast to help you discover practical, guilt-free self-care strategies through the calming practice of knitting. I'll help you break free from the overwhelm, quiet the noise and comparison of social media, empowering you to pick up your knitting needles instead and embrace moments of rest, creativity, and mindfulness. Hi, I'm Nadine, a mom, wife, and passionate knitter. I first learned to knit as a teenager from my grandmother back in Germany, but for some reason, I put my needles down in my 20s. It wasn't until 2020, when everyone was searching for ways to ease the anxiety of the unknown, that I picked knitting back up, and something amazing happened. I found peace and joy in the cozy, calming rhythm of knitting, and now I'm so excited to share my practical tips and habits with you so you can reclaim your time, recharge, and rediscover the things that bring you happiness. It's time to ditch the endless scroll on social media and focus on what truly matters, your well-being. So if you're ready to take control of your stress, ditch overwhelm and social media comparison, rekindle your creativity, and recharge with a hobby you love, this podcast will guide you every step of the way. Take a deep breath, grab your knitting needles, and let's start creating a life with less stress and more joy, one stitch at a time. Hey mama, I have got something super exciting for you. If you've been feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or like there's never enough time for you, I've got the perfect solution. Do you ever wonder if knitting could be the stress buster you've been searching for? I've put together a super fun quiz to help you find out. It's quick, it's easy, and spoiler alert, it just might be your new favorite self-care tool. Head over to theknittingmamas.com/quiz to take the 30-second quiz and find out now if knitting is your dream self-care and stress-busting tool. Right after you take the quiz, you will also get my free 5-step guide to your first knitting project. Let's swap that stress for some stitches. Head over to theknittingmamas.com/quiz to find out. Hey, and welcome back to the podcast. Can you guys believe that this is episode number 50? I'm so excited. I can't believe it's already the 50th episode. I'm so pumped about that I actually decided to do a little giveaway for you guys. So, in order to enter, actually, what can you win? You can win a $50 Amazon gift card. Woohoo! How do you enter? Super, super easy. So you go to the Apple Podcast app, which is hopefully where you're listening to this podcast anyway. If not, I'm providing the link in the show notes so you can head on over there. And then you're going to leave a 5-star written review for the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. Take a screenshot of your review and then email it to me at nadine@theknittingmamas.com for confirmation that you actually left the review. And that is it. That is your entry to win a $50 Amazon gift card. The giveaway starts today, and I'm going to pull the winner on the 23rd. So it's open for exactly a week from today. And that's it. I'm so excited, and I can't wait to see what your reviews will look like. I would love to hear what you think about the podcast. If you're anything like me, you have probably felt that pressure to get everything perfect. Like, to me, that happens in every area of my life, at home, at work, in my hobbies. But here's the thing, knitting doesn't demand perfection, and we shouldn't either. And if it's something that is holding you back from trying to knit because you think you have to watch all the videos first and do all the things and have the perfect tools and things like that before you can start, I'm telling you that you are missing out. And I'm going to be honest with you, I make mistakes all the time when I'm knitting. It's so funny that I'm actually recording this today because just yesterday when I had my knitting project with me at an event for my kids and I was just chatting with other moms, I was sitting and I had my project with me because I just take it everywhere, like I always talk about here on the podcast too. And I was knitting away while I was chatting to this mama, and all of a sudden after 5 to 7 rows of garter stitching it, I realized that I was supposed to stockinette stitch. So I completely knitted, for a while in the wrong stitch. And I'm still not sure if I'm just going to roll with it or if I'm going to undo it. But the point here is that I decided to just go with it. It's not about being perfect. It's not about creating a garment that I could buy at the store that is knitted by a machine. It is about having fun and enjoying the process, right? I can tell you for sure that I make mistakes all the time when I'm knitting. I did it yesterday, and I did it last week, and I did it last month. I forget stitches. I drop a stitch. I have to always look things up that are either outside of my comfort zone or outside of my, everyday stuff that I do, something that's new or something that I haven't done in a while. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it never stopped me from knitting. And more importantly, never stopped me from enjoying the process. And I think it's just so important to talk about that because you do not have to be the perfect knitter to start. I think it's much more important to embrace the imperfections and look at the process more than you look at the result. Because the result, with practice, and the more you do it, the results will come, and you definitely will always have something to be proud of, even if you have mistakes in your knitting, even if there's something that you have to undo, or even if you throw it in a corner and say, you know what, I'm done with this for now. I don't want to do it anymore. And you just cast on a new project. Enjoying the process is so much more important than having the final result looking perfect, in my opinion, because the whole point of knitting for stress relief, for, relaxation and creating more calm and peace in your life and creating more time for yourself is the actual process of doing it. So if we don't enjoy that and we get upset and frustrated about our result, about our mistakes because we want to make it perfect, we're taking all the joy out of it. Okay. So today I kind of wanted to touch on a few points that I think are important to think about when it comes to removing the block of perfectionism in this beautiful craft of knitting. So let's get started with that. So the first thing, kind of touched on it already, is to embrace the imperfection. Knitting in itself is full of little hiccups. There's so many things that you can do a certain way, right? And then there's so many people who are like, okay, no, you got to knit this way and you got to knit that way. It's not an exact science, and you can do things your way. And if you have to look back and see how to do something, if you drop a stitch, you pick it up. If you mess up a row, you undo it or don't. Embrace it, literally. Like, I'm still thinking about keeping those garter stitch rows where I put them and put the same pattern on the other sleeve so that they at least look even, but leave it that way because it's not really messing up the flow of things. And just because the pattern is different doesn't mean that I can't change things, right? So the beauty of knitting is that it's very forgiving, which is why, again, I love it so much for anybody who is a beginner. You can always go back to fix things, or you can decide to roll with it, which is usually my go-to. I am very laid back when it comes to that, and I want you to embrace that kind of a mindset too. And I want you to think about it this way. Mistakes do not make you a bad knitter. They make you a real knitter. right? The key is to embrace the learning process and let go of the pressure to be perfect. This mindset and this whole concept of letting go of that may spill over into other areas of your life as well, where you are holding yourself to this insane standard, which we as moms do so often. Like, we feel like our house has to be clean a certain way. We feel like our laundry always has to be done. And if it's not, which, hello, in most cases, it's not, we hold ourselves to that standard and it's almost impossible to do, right? So we always fall short and it just leaves us exhausted and not enough and less than. And it's not healthy for us. So those little imperfections that we have in our knitting projects, and if we kind of deal with them in much more laid back ways, will not only make us feel better, but will leave us with projects that are uniquely ours. No one else has that because no one else messed up that row. Think about it that way, and I can tell you it changes the way you knit, the joy you have while you're doing it. It isn't about perfection. If you want a perfect sweater, go to the store and buy the one that the machine knitted. All right. Which kind of rolls into this next point, right? Knitting is about joy and not perfection. So let's shift the focus, because at the end of the day, knitting is about joy and it's not about the perfect stitches or the flawless projects. It brings this kind of happiness to us that comes from the process itself, which is watching something come together and then just feeling the yarn and seeing your stitches creating, like literally, this is the most magical thing to me, is that you do these little repetitive movements which calm you down, which make you feel like you're almost like in a meditative state, and you're watching these little teeny tiny stitches come together to form this beautiful canvas that you're creating. My husband always sits next to me in awe when I knit, and he said, wow, it's number one, it's like you're coding because you're putting together little tiny pieces into one large, piece that now actually looks like something. But it's also like so soothing looking, and it's just so fascinating how these tiny little pieces come together to form something that big and gorgeous. So if you're feeling stuck because you're worried about being good at knitting, please let it go. It's not about getting it right all the time. Of course, it's fun, right? When you finally master the stitch and you're like, my gosh, I just learned how to cast on, and it's so fun that I actually learned how to do this. But if your stitches are a little uneven, give it some time, right? If it's giving yourself the time and the freedom to create without judging yourself. And I know sometimes this can be hard because you sometimes might think, oh my gosh, why am I not getting this? But try to embrace this mindset of I'm new, I'm learning, and what I am creating is beautiful. And the process that I'm in is actually what's making this beneficial for me, and not the result and not the perfection. So the third thing is the fear of not being good enough, which I completely understand. So many of us, especially us moms, are hesitant to start something new because we think we have to be good at it from the get-go. Have you ever felt that way? And I know I speak to a lot of you guys because I'm also speaking to myself here. The fear of messing up can literally stop us in our tracks. It's like, nope, I'm not even going to try this if I don't know how to do it, or if I don't know that I'm good at it. And I just was talking to some knitters, like longtime knitters, in a Facebook group yesterday, not in ours, but in a different one that I'm in. And I was just asking them some questions like, hey, when you first started, what was your biggest fear or roadblock? And a lot of them said, I was just worried that I wasn't going to be good at it and that this is all a big waste of time. But I want to share a secret with you. You do not have to be good at knitting in order to enjoy it. It's often these imperfect projects, the ones with the dropped stitch or the uneven edges, that remind us that we're learning, growing, and getting better. And I find it so fun, honestly, to see a project from years ago when I was not a beginner, because I haven't been a beginner in 30 years, but I was sort of new-ish to knitting person. Like, it took 20 years of a break for me to finally pick it back up. So I felt like a beginner, and I can definitely see a progress from those first projects that I started. And I've also gotten to a point where I am now, wanting to do more challenging things that I never would have thought I would be able to even create, touch, try. And it's just fabulous to see the progress and see the change in your own knitting journey. And I think it's just super fun to see. And there's going to be pieces where you're like, yeah, that was way back when I first learned, and I might not want to wear that anymore, but I have now a piece to replace that with. And I think that's totally okay. But I would highly encourage you to keep those beginner projects just so that you can see how much you have learned and how much you have changed and how much better you've gotten over time. So I think really it is all about finding the joy in the process of learning this, making it better, and just keep practicing and practicing. And that's how you're going to really see the difference in your journey. It's just so fun to watch. I think it's fantastic. Now let's talk about the magic of what you create, including your imperfections. So I personally think there's nothing quite like wearing something that you have made with your own hands. And even if that's not perfect, when I wear any of my scarves or sweaters that I've knitted, I always feel a sense of pride, not because it's flawless, but because I made it. And I can tell you 100% of my projects that I have completed have one or more mistakes in them. And it might be a dropped stitch. It might be one, like a wrong stitch, you're knitting all stockinette and it looks all nice and even, and all of a sudden, for some weird reason, you have a purl stitch in there. Who cares? It is my piece. I love wearing it, and I find it magical that I created it, that I didn't have help. I made it myself, and I learned how to do it. I taught myself, or I learned it from a YouTube video. And it's mine, and I get to wear it any way I want. Sometimes so when I wear one of my knitted pieces out, it's so funny. I almost want people to ask me if I made it. And I know that if it would look perfectly knitted, like super flawless, people would be like, yeah, no, she didn't make that. That's bought. And I find it actually kind of funny when they look quirky and you can say, yeah, I totally made that, and it's not perfect, but it's mine, and I did make it, and I'm so proud of it, right? So once again, do not let the fear of imperfection stop you from creating something that you can be so proud of. The joy comes from the process, and the pride you feel comes from seeing what you've made, no matter how it turns out. And if it really isn't something that you end up liking, which I have had that happen too, where I thought something would come out a certain way and then it didn't. And it didn't have necessarily to do with my skills or with mistakes that I've made, but it was just not, the fit wasn't right, or the color didn't end up looking as I had expected or something. You can always give it away as a gift, or you can give it to Goodwill, and someone else is going to love it. Someone else is going to love it. You're not making these things for nothing. And at the very least, you've had fun in the creating process. Let's talk about the stress relief part and how much more stress relief you will get from knitting when you take the pressure off, right? It's such an incredible way to relieve stress and calm your mind and take a break from the pressures of daily life. But you kind of counter that if you put too much pressure on yourself to be a perfect knitter. So let's keep knitting what it is supposed to be, a joyful activity, and not something that requires perfection, where, you're putting all this pressure on yourself to get it right. Just let knitting be the peaceful, rewarding hobby that it is meant to be, and that it absolutely can be for you. Okay? So I want to leave you with this today. Knitting isn't about perfection. It is about picking up the needles, giving yourself the space to be creative, and enjoying the progress, the process, because you're going to see progress for sure. Your projects don't have to be perfect to bring you joy or stress relief. They just have to be yours, right? And if you've been about the fence, about starting because you are worried that you won't be good enough, or, that you're not going to get it right on the first try, I'm here to tell you, you already are. right? The moment you decide to listen to this podcast and to maybe give knitting a try, you have become a knitter. And the more you practice, the more fun it becomes. So please go ahead and grab your yarn. And I want you to take the quiz. Please, if you're still on the fence, wondering if this is, in fact, if you've listened to this far on this podcast, I'm having a feeling that you are ready to dive in and to get knitting. But just to confirm, go ahead and take the quiz. Go to thenittingmamas.com/quiz. Take the quiz to find out if knitting might just be the stress-busting tool that you are craving. And I will send you a guide to get started on your first project completely free. So super excited for you to get started, take the quiz, and I'll see you on the other side. So I think if you've been waiting for the quote unquote right time to start knitting, it's here. You're it. You're in it. This is the right time to get started. And I just can't wait to see what you create. So I want to encourage and invite you into our Facebook community as well, thenittingmamas.com/group. You can click over there to join. It's going to be in the show notes as well. And can't wait to welcome you over there and be part of the community and just dive in to becoming the knitter that you want to be. No perfection required. All right, mamas, I will talk to you very soon right here on the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to thenittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best. Catch you next time on the Knit the Stress Away podcast.